to one of the media's biggest benefactors, or more precisely, one of its biggest advertisers. And once again, bad news is getting buried.
Harvey Norman has lost a case in the federal court today. What happened?
The retailer Harvey Norman, along with Latitude Financial Services, misled consumers in an ad campaign promoting interest-free payments and other deals.
We're often warned that if things look too good to be true, they probably are. And Harvey Norman's promise that you could buy homewares with no deposit and 60 months interest-free certainly was. Because its massive ad campaign, which ran for 18 months in 2020 and 2021, did not make clear that you had to sign up for a credit card and pay up to $540 in fees to get the deal. Which is why ASIC claimed, and the federal court ruled, that Harvey Norman and Latitude Financial broke the law.
What the judge found was that the consumers had to enter a fundamentally different financial arrangement than the one that was advertised to consumers, and that involved taking up a credit contract, a credit card, paying establishment fees.
Now, you'd think this would be a great consumer yarn, given that it involves one of Australia's biggest and best-known retailers pulling a Swiftie and taking customers for almost $20 million. But amazingly, all the commercial TV news bulletins missed the story. Yet Channel 9 and Channel 7 did find time to run these ads from Harvey Norman and Domain, which is part of the same group.
Hurry, more great deals at Harvey Norman now.
And over in the print media, the deal was much the same. The day after the story broke, the Nine papers and News Corp tabloids ran page after page after page of ads for Harvey Norman and Domain. Yet none could find space for news of the court decision, although Nine did cover it in breaking news online. The only print story we could find was buried on page 27 in The Australian, while an ad for the retailer filled an entire page in another part of the paper. And a week later, the Oz was running this page 7 puff.
Katie and Jerry's new chapter in British history, the Harvey Norman conquest.
Now, if all this media blindness to Harvey Norman's misdemeanours sounds familiar, you would be right. Because this same partnership between Harvey Norman and Latitude came in for a bashing in 2020 from Choice, who gave it a notorious Shonky Award for charging 22.74% on a credit card, when the cash rate was 0.25%. And, as we told you back then, most of the media did not bother to cover the retailer's shame. We can't find any mention of the Shonky Awards this year in any Nine newspaper, print or online, even though they've covered the Shonkies for years. And at News Corp, who've also covered the Shonkies in the past, the only story in the Metro mastheads was in news.com.au, where, surprise, surprise, Harvey Norman's Shonky credit card did not get a mention. And on radio, some folks were no keener to bite the hand that feeds them, with the hosts on Triple M Adelaide making sure their benefactors at Harvey Norman did not get slagged when the Shonkies were discussed on the programme.
Let's go to Jonathan Brown, who's from Choice magazine. Who have you named and shamed this year?
We also have Harvey Norman. Now, this is an interesting one, because we're
careful, they're a sponsor of Triple M.
And when the chap from Choice wasn't careful enough, the hosts were quick to pull him up.
The interest rates are pretty high, are they?
Well over 22%, which is one of the most expensive on the entire market of credit cards.
Okay.
So you can't accuse them of being shonky. You can say that they charge a lot for their credit card.
Yep, not shonky, just greedy. And now the media are going soft on the federal court ruling against Harvey Norman, with little more than scant coverage online. We asked the TV divisions of 9, 7 and 10 why they failed to cover the story in their bulletins. 10 ducked the question, but said advertising spend has no influence on editorial coverage, as did 9 News, which pointed to one story on its digital platform. We also asked News Corp why its tabloid papers didn't run anything. We did not hear back. But we think there's a simple explanation. Figures from Nielsen show that Harvey Norman was the #1 advertiser in Australia when it scored that Shonky Award with an annual spend of $165 million. And it was #1 again last year. And if you want to know what the retailer's money will buy, the federal court says the misleading ad campaign in 2020-21 involved
television advertisements broadcast on at least 900,000 occasions on 367 specified stations.
That is an average of 1,500 ads a day across Australian TV stations for a year and a half, which is frankly incredible, along with ads on 143 radio stations and in 168 newspapers around the country. And looking at the Saturday papers after the federal court finding, we counted a remarkable 150 full-page ads in 10 newspapers, worth around $1.2 million, according to Steve Allen at Pearman Media. So you can see why the media might want to play down the company's crimes. ASIC is now seeking heavy financial penalties for Harvey Norman and Latitude as punishment. We can only hope the media does a better job in covering that.
Mr. White, my name's Liam Mendes. I'm a journalist with The Australian. Why have you resigned today? Mr. White, why have you resigned today?
I'm not talking.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch. And that's the Australian billionaire Richard White getting bailed up by the Australian after stepping down as CEO of WiseTech, the software company he founded 3 decades ago. And here is why.
A secret affair, extraordinary gifts and a tech empire in the spotlight. Strap yourselves in, folks, because an Australian billionaire businessman is embroiled in a salacious scandal with new revelations by the day.
It just keeps coming. So here is what we know, labelled the LinkedIn lecture.
A catchy but damning tag from one unnamed woman who says White approached her on LinkedIn, with the Sydney Morning Herald using the line on its front page last Monday, in marking the start of a 5-day run of damning front pages across the 9 papers by reporters Kemba Claremont, Nick McKenzie and Max Mason, which ended on Friday with White forced out.
WiseTech boss quits,
but keeps $1 million salary.
So, how did such a stellar business career unravel so fast? The answer? A former lover and beauty entrepreneur called Linda Rogan.
She alleges the tech billionaire demanded sex for investment backing, behaviour believed to be corroborated by other female entrepreneurs. She's also claiming she was left out of pocket after furnishing a luxury home the tech billionaire bought her before their relationship soured.
White's downfall is a reminder. If you want privacy, don't end up in court. With the AFR and Herald revealing in early October that White was trying to suppress details of a legal battle with his former lover, which centred on a $90,000 furniture bill for a secret $13 million mansion that White had bought for Rogan. And before long, more stories came gushing out, with a second woman alleging advice for sex and going on camera to talk about her adventures with the tech billionaire.
He greeted me with a bunch of flowers and I looked inside and there was a sex toy in there. So that was quite, I thought, wow, okay, not very gentlemanly.
And after that came yet more allegations about former lovers, fancy houses and bitter disputes, capped with this damaging exclusive in the 9 papers last Thursday, which put the spotlight on the culture inside his company, with one former WiseTech director accusing White of
sustained intimidation and bullying in the form of aggressive emails, one-on-one meetings and public berating in both audit and risk committee meetings and board meetings.
Later that day, Richard White quit as CEO, which is why the Australian was papping him in the company car park.
Are you concerned about more women are going to come out, Mr. White?
It is an extraordinary and dramatic fall from grace, and it beggars belief that the billionaire didn't realise this would be the end result of going to court. Because once the media gets a sniff of a scandal, you're in the crosshairs. And if there's anything to find, it will be found, not least because others who feel wronged will be keen to speak out. Let's not forget, only 2 months ago, White was enjoying the good vibes of both the media and the market.
And just a personal question. I noticed on the stock market with the shares going up today, I think your wealth went up by more than $1 billion today.
I did it?
I did, right?
Yep, when you're making $1 billion a day, why on earth would you risk riches and reputation for a mere 90 grand? And why aren't you listening to your media advisor, who would surely be telling you to keep out of the headlines? But now, once again, to the conflict in Lebanon and Gaza and the importance of eyewitness reporting to bring home the awful reality of war, with PBS NewsHour correspondent Layla Malala Allen telling us last week that seeing it firsthand is vital.
This is not a video game. These are lives, they are homes, they are the bodies that you hold and hug every day being ripped apart. I think that is so important, because that's what war is.
So, is it still safe for journalists to report from the front line? It seems after last week, the answer is no.
We begin with breaking news coming out of Southern Lebanon, where at least 3 journalists have been killed in an Israeli strike in Azbeya. Israel targeted a building where journalists have been residing.
We know that they work for Al-Manar and Al-Mayadeen TV channels. Al-Manar is a state channel in Lebanon. Al-Mayadeen has some kind of affiliation or link to Hezbollah.
This fatal attack is another indication that Israel is targeting journalists and that nowhere is safe, with the deaths sparking immediate condemnation from around the world.
Lebanon's Ministry of Information is calling this a war crime. We haven't had specific comment from the IDF on this particular attack as of yet.
The Israeli strike targeted a guest house where a large group of journalists was known to be staying, about 5 miles from Lebanon's southern border. A drone or missile reportedly hitting the compound without warning at around 4 in the morning while the journalists were asleep, leaving piles of rubble and tangled metal. Imran Khan, a reporter for Al Jazeera English, did this live cross soon afterwards.
Suffice to say, these are the people that I've been working with almost every single day. We've all been doing our jobs here in Hasbaya. So this is a very serious incident. Israel didn't give any warning.
The guest house was away from the combat zone and not in an area that Israel had ordered to be evacuated. Indeed, the journalists from Al Jazeera and several different Lebanese media organisations had moved there because it was safe. And as the ABC's Eric Torchek reported,
they also said they'd made UN peacekeepers aware of their location, and the UN had passed on to the Israelis that it was a media contingent that was staying in that compound.
It's hard to see how it could have been an accident. The attack was quickly condemned by the Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Sans Frontières, who said it appeared to be a war crime, with RSF adding,
Israeli forces must stop targeting the media. The International Criminal Court must be allowed to investigate this attack.
Before the attack, there was also a mild rebuke from US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, whose weapons may well have done the killing. Blinken saying far too many journalists have died. To which Israel's award-winning journalist, Gideon Levy, who is a fierce critic of the war, responded,
No, Mr. Blinken, too many journalists were killed by the Israeli army. That's the way to say it. Their life was not taken by God or by fate. Their life was taken by the Israeli army that you support, you finance, you arm.
So, could it really have been deliberate? Well, yes. The media death toll in this war is now up to 131, according to the CPJ. And the IDF is now arguing that reporters in northern Gaza can be legitimate targets.
The Israeli military has released these documents, which it maintains as evidence that 6 of Al Jazeera's journalists are members of the armed wings of the Palestinian groups Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
The message being they should get out or face the consequences. Al Jazeera says the claims are baseless and released a statement saying,
It views these fabricated accusations as a blatant attempt to silence the few remaining journalists in the region.
And the head of the Committee to Protect Journalists agrees, calling it a deliberate Israeli tactic to discredit reporting out of Gaza.
If the people taking the pictures, the people producing these reports are terrorists, then what they're producing cannot be credible. And so it's intentional to make us doubt the images that we see.
The 3 journalists killed in the Lebanon strike worked for TV networks linked to Hezbollah or Iran. So, will Israel argue that they were terrorists? Who knows? But the law is clear. Under Article 79 of the Geneva Convention, journalists in war zones are protected, provided they play no part in hostilities. And there is no evidence those working from the media compound in South Lebanon were doing anything other than covering the war. With an expert from Human Rights Watch telling the New York Times,
Journalists, regardless of political affiliation, are considered civilians, and intentionally directing attacks against civilians would amount to a war crime.
But that is cold comfort for reporters on the ground, or those who remain in the town of Hasbaya, where the 3 journalists were killed on Friday, with Al Jazeera's Imran Khan saying the reporters who survived are pulling out.
What's happening now is a deliberate message to all journalists. We have to now leave. Not just us, but every other organisation that was here. Local news organisations all now have to leave because of what has happened.
If that was Israel's intention, it is mission accomplished. But in a statement to Media Watch, the Israel Defence Forces said it was targeting a Hezbollah structure in Hasbaya,
from which Hezbollah terrorists were operating, as shown by this incident. Proximity to Hezbollah terrorists and terrorist infrastructure poses a danger. Several hours after the strike, reports were received that journalists had been hit during the strike. The incident is under review.
We'll see what, if anything, comes of that. That's all from us for tonight. You can read statements from 9, 10 and the IDF on our website. Don't forget Media Bites on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram. But from now till next week, goodbye.